Welcome to Episode 6, PRISMA Scoring Basics, where we explore how maturity scoring turns scattered evidence into dependable assurance. Scoring matters because it converts complex control activity into clear signals that buyers, leaders, and assessors can understand the same way. Without a shared method, reviews feel subjective, and teams argue about opinions instead of outcomes, which slows decisions and erodes trust. A consistent model lets different reviewers reach similar conclusions when looking at the same artifacts, which is essential for fairness. It also reveals where improvement will actually lower risk, rather than rewarding cosmetic documentation that never touches operations. With scoring, a program can show progress over time and explain why a level rose or fell using numbers, examples, and traceable artifacts. This makes planning easier because effort can be aimed at the specific maturity step that unlocks the next tier of confidence. In short, scoring is the bridge between day-to-day control work and the external assurance that organizations rely on to do business. Evidence sufficiency and traceability decide whether a maturity claim truly deserves credit under a careful review. Sufficiency asks if the artifact proves the stated point without relying on assumptions, while traceability shows where it came from and what scope it covers. Screenshots should include timestamps, system identifiers, and the setting and context. Exports should display filters and ranges. Tickets should link approvals to the exact change. Traceability also means a reviewer can follow a thread from requirement to control to artifact without guessing or hunting across folders. If any link is missing, the level may be lowered because the conclusion cannot be reproduced by another assessor. Good practice is to label files with system, control, date, and scope so reuse is safe and misunderstandings are rare. When sufficiency and traceability are strong, the discussion shifts from debating opinions to improving outcomes. That shift saves time, reduces friction, and allows scoring to reflect reality with the precision that assurance expects. Sampling has a direct impact on maturity scoring because it defines what portion of reality the evidence represents in time and space. A single perfect example might show that a control can work, while a representative sample shows that it does work across the environment. Define the population clearly, choose a selection method, and state the timing window so the evidence is both current and relevant to scope. Random samples reduce bias and demonstrate general coverage, while risk-based samples focus attention where failure would hurt the mission most. If results differ across segments, score to reflect that variation rather than averaging problems away. Document exclusions and justify them so reviewers understand why some records were out of bounds and others were included. Sampling decisions should be visible in the test file so future readers can rerun the logic without reverse engineering. When sampling is explicit and fair, maturity levels feel earned, and confidence grows that scores describe the real operating picture. Weighting and roll-up mechanics determine how individual control results produce an overall score that reflects real risk. Not every safeguard carries the same consequence, so assigning weights helps the composite reflect what matters most for the mission. Roll-up rules should be written in plain language, with minimum gates for critical anchors and averaging for supporting items where appropriate. Be cautious with simple arithmetic means, because a few high scores can hide a dangerous low score in a foundational area like identity. A practical pattern is to set must-meet thresholds for anchors like access control and backup restore, then allow weighted averaging elsewhere. Publish the formula, the weights, and any rounding rules so readers can reproduce the math and trust the outcome. When roll-up rules are transparent, teams can predict how improvements will move the needle and plan work accordingly. Clear mechanics prevent disputes later and keep scoring aligned with the actual priorities of the organization and its stakeholders. Minimum thresholds and pass criteria protect the integrity of assurance by setting bars that cannot be averaged away by other strengths. A threshold might require that specific high-impact controls reach implemented or measured levels before any certification can proceed, regardless of totals. Pass criteria should explain both the overall score needed and the non-negotiable conditions that must be met for critical safeguards. This avoids situations where strong performance elsewhere masks a weakness that would cause a severe incident if it failed in production. Communicate these gates early so teams aim effort at the right fixes and do not chase cosmetic uplift. During review, verify thresholds with explicit evidence and note any temporary exceptions with owners and end dates. When thresholds are clear and enforced, stakeholders gain confidence that the badge represents real protection, not clever arithmetic. The result is a program whose scores are harder to earn but easier to defend, which is the trade most leaders prefer. Quality assurance reviews the scoring logic before results are finalized, acting as a gate that protects consistency and fairness. A good review checks that mappings are accurate, samples are representative, and evidence actually supports the level that was awarded. It also recalculates roll-ups and thresholds to ensure the math matches the written rules and that spreadsheets agree with narratives. Where findings rely on judgment, the review asks whether a different assessor would likely reach the same decision given the same inputs. Discrepancies are documented with clear remediation steps, such as tightening a test, fixing a mapping, or collecting a missing artifact. The goal is not to slow teams down, but to remove ambiguity while changes are still cheap and before reports circulate widely. Over time, this gate raises the baseline because people learn what good looks like and copy it into their daily habits. When quality assurance is predictable and constructive, trust in the scoring process grows along with the accuracy of the results. Linking metrics to maturity levels closes the loop between daily operation and scored outcomes in a way leaders can follow. Metrics provide the measured and managed proof that separates basic implementation from sustained performance under load and over time. Choose indicators that reflect user behavior and control outcomes, such as mean time to patch, privileged approval latency, or restore success rates. Tie each metric to a target that corresponds to maturity language, so teams know what level their current trend actually supports. Visuals are helpful for operations, but the score should be traceable to underlying data points with dates, systems, and responsible owners. When metrics slip, the maturity level can slip too, which is honest and helpful because it prompts corrective action before incidents. Conversely, sustained improvement backed by metrics can justify a higher score with confidence rather than hope. This linkage turns maturity into a management tool instead of a seasonal audit exercise that fades once the report is published. A near-term scoring strategy focuses on realistic moves that lift many controls with minimal friction and visible impact. Start by closing definition gaps so policy and procedure evidence is clean, current, and easy to find for the controls in scope. Next, target high-leverage implementations, identity, endpoint management, vulnerability handling, backups, and logging, because they influence sampling and outcomes almost everywhere. Add simple measurement routines to these areas so artifacts show results, not just settings, and set thresholds that match maturity language. Where scores are borderline, rehearse tests, refresh samples, and tighten scope statements so conclusions are defensible and repeatable. Communicate progress in the same structure used for scoring so leaders see exactly how actions move levels. This strategy builds momentum, reduces surprises during review, and creates habits that carry into deeper assessments. By aiming for practical wins that compound, teams improve assurance quickly while laying the groundwork for durable maturity. Along the way, document exceptions with owners and end dates so temporary realities do not quietly become permanent design. Maintaining scores between assessments requires rhythm and hygiene, so levels do not slip when attention shifts to new projects. Establish cadences for reviews, reconciliations, and artifact refreshes that mirror how the environment actually changes month to month. Capture evidence as work occurs, tickets, exports, and screenshots, so the record is continuous rather than reconstructed under deadline stress. Keep inherited controls verified on a schedule, so provider updates or configuration drift do not surprise the program during testing. Track exceptions with owners, risk notes, and dates so they close on purpose rather than linger indefinitely. Store artifacts with consistent names that include system, control, and date to make reuse safe and fast across multiple requests. When these habits are in place, the next assessment feels like confirmation rather than a scramble to remember what happened. The payoff is stability. Scores stay honest, improvements stick, and the organization can plan with confidence instead of relying on memory. Over time, this steadiness builds credibility with partners who learn that good results are the norm, not a once-a-year performance. Clarity, consistency, and credibility are the landmarks of effective PRISMA scoring, and they are within reach when teams use the model as intended. Be clear about definitions and scope so everyone knows what is being judged and why the level awarded makes sense for the risk. Be consistent in test procedures, sampling, weighting, and thresholds so results are reproducible and transparent across cycles and assessors. Be credible by choosing evidence that speaks for itself, labeling it for reuse, and acknowledging gaps with concrete plans and owners. When these qualities work together, the score tells a true story that guides investment, unlocks buyer confidence, and focuses energy on real weaknesses. It also gives leaders a way to see movement over time without drowning in technical detail or subjective debate. Use the levels as a ladder, not a label, and keep climbing in small, visible steps that matter to the mission. That is how maturity becomes an everyday habit rather than a temporary push that fades once the report is signed.